From the University of Nebraska at Omaha, this is NCITE Insights. I'm your host, Erin Grace. Well, welcome to NCITE Insights. I'm so excited about today's guest, Dr. Deanna House from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. She is an assistant professor, a lead researcher of the Cyber Threat Analysis Lab, or CTAL at NCITE. She's got this amazing resume, and she's part of a team that won a recent NCITE grant to study how to mitigate against deepfake attacks to critical infrastructure. She's on the team with Dr. Matt Jensen of the University of Oklahoma and Dr. Alan Johnson of the University of Alabama. And there's a lot I want to talk about with Dr. House, so we are going to get right to it. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, that's good. Well, we are sitting in our new podcast studio. Used to be upstairs, and we're right down the hallway here at NCITE in Omaha, Nebraska from the Student SOC, Security Operations Center, and you have a threat analysis lab connected to that. So tell us what that is.
Yeah, so the CTAL, as you called it, is a collaborative environment under which we're going to look at cybersecurity research, but also try to have a connecting vector between the Nebraska system, information technology system entities, and also the NCITE researchers.
And we should say for people, like if my mom and dad were listening, what is a SOC? Most of our listeners may know what that is, Deanna, but can you just explain how the SOC works here for the University of Nebraska?
Sure. So a Security Operations Center is a SOC, and it's a place where workers are looking at different threats and trying to read and understand the data that exists within the system and come up with protective mechanisms and mitigations, which is another mouthful.
No, that was a
preventing
perfect.
attacks, detecting, preventing, and many other things.
And I believe ours here at NCITE was the first student-run SOC, and so these students are the ones who are creating tickets for cyber intrusions. And then your job is, of course, to analyze that and find the nexus with terrorism.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, awesome. So tell us where CTAL is these days. I know you hired a grad student. What do you want to look at? What is your vision?
Yeah, so we've been exploring a little bit into the realm of threat hunting, because when you're in an operational SOC, there's a lot of day-to-day stuff and a lot of noise potentially that can cover up attacks that are happening. And threat hunting is like looking for a needle in a haystack, but also trying to figure out attacks that we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated, and it's not typically something that a SOC has the resources to expend in an employee in a 40-hour week.
I think everybody anymore has been the victim of or has seen what a cyber attack looks like and how debilitating that can be. And so is there an example of a threat hunt you can think of that would help mitigate a bigger attack on a system?
Yeah, so typically it would be something like a zero-day exploit, something that maybe doesn't have indicators of compromise that anyone has seen before, something very creative. Another threat hunting mechanism could be something that no one has found yet within the system. So like if an attacker were hiding their tracks, and so the automatic detection mechanisms and systems don't pick them up, this is more of a human intervention type situation.
I always think that a cyber attack is something that happens like throwing a brick through a window. Like it just is a sudden thing that just happens. And it's interesting to think that it's just bad actors are lurking and they're just waiting. And so your threat hunt would go after that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the average time before an attack is kicked off, it varies greatly from year to year. Sometimes it's like 140 days before it's detected. Wow. Or sometimes it can go down or up. I'm sad I don't have the latest numbers, but it does vary.
140 days tells you right away.
That creativity, right? And there's just people that like to go out and sit around and wait for the right opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they want some money or something else, or something kicks off a motivation for them to attack.
Really, it's so interesting how cyber is just the next domain for bad actors. And so that kind of tees us up to what you're working on. So congratulations, you guys just kicked off your project. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you're trying to do with your colleagues at University of Oklahoma and Alabama?
Yeah, so Matt Jensen and Alan Johnston, both very experienced researchers in behavior and cybersecurity and deception, and just really excited to be able to work with them. I have a lot of engagement with the community in the way that I do my research, but I don't always have the all of the skills to kick off a large-scale experiment. So I think this is really promising in that we're a trifecta, that we're going to work together and really build upon each other's strengths. I already see that in the meetings that we've had so far. We even have different students and different access to students that have various areas of expertise. So IO psychology, cybersecurity, Ph.D, graduate level, MIS, a lot of different perspectives and disciplines kind of building into what our design is for deepfakes. And like we talked about before with threat hunting and 0 days, deepfakes are not something that are really being thought of. I was looking at a recent report from, I think, the consumer marketing, I won't say it right. I was looking at a recent report on business-to-business thoughts of deepfake, right?
Okay.
And a lot of the businesses that were interviewed as part of this research didn't think it was going to happen to them. So that's just like a cyber attack as well, right? People don't think a phishing attack will happen, they don't protect, and then next thing you know, they're out millions of dollars, or a ransomware attack.
Yeah, right. People think they're too smart. I mean, that's so, isn't that so universal that if there's a physical attack, people always say the same thing. I know these exist, but I never imagine it happens to me. I don't know what that is about. Human psychology that we don't think it will. And so your project is going to help educate people on that. So let's talk about the 3 phases of your research project. Phase 1 is interviewing with cybersecurity leaders. So who are you looking at?
Yeah, so we are looking at trying to interview folks that are in critical infrastructure and higher up cyber and information technology positions, so executives.
Okay.
Every person, and we've sort of split how we're going to interview, that all of us are going to participate in this interview process. And every person that we talk to is very excited to participate and very excited to hear what our mitigation strategies are going to be, which I won't spoil it for you in phase 3.
All right.
So yeah, we're trying to kind of key in on critical infrastructure as who our focus area is. And again, at that executive level, to really understand, have they been attacked or thought about deepfakes, or what are they doing to prevent that? And also to really influence phase 2 and phase 3 and the subsequent phases, so that we're not just taking what we can find, but also going deep in boots on the ground as far as what folks are experiencing. So
the first phase 1, you're just trying to get a baseline understanding of what these executives know about deepfakes?
Or really, their knowledge of, and also what potentially they've been affected by.
I see.
And we're doing this in a very anonymized way, because there's this sort of embarrassment and shame, and or potentially other effects that could happen.
How could I happen? Okay. And they may not want it known that company X or critical infrastructure Y fell for this thing. So we should define again for my parents what a deep fake is. What's your best definition of that?
Yeah, so if you think of the creation of something that isn't real, but it's in a video format, a lot of times there is a generative AI concept or component to the deep fake. So you can take a I've heard from folks in industry, 10-second clip of someone talking and create a pretty realistic video from that.
Awesome.
So it's very terrifying, and you think
Right.
like executives have shareholder meetings or other things, other content that exists in the wild that someone could take to create these things.
So you could have a fake Deanna House telling us
yeah.
about something.
Absolutely.
So Deanna, they have it. They can do generative AI from this podcast, right?
My student is doing that. Yeah.
Really?
She was going to take some of my coursework just to test out and see. And I told her, I'm like, we want to be careful where that gets sent. I don't want that on some server that is potentially going to be used maliciously, right? So even as a researcher doing these types of topics, we are vulnerable in a way too.
Yeah, wow. So, we were talking before the camera went on about a story about deepfakes that just broke yesterday. And so, we're in late February. We have a new president, and it appears that government workers showed up for work yesterday at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and displayed across the screens was a deep fake of President Trump and Elon Musk, and it had some words on there about "Long live the king" or something like that, "Long live the real king," and this was a deep fake, and nobody at HUD apparently knew how to get rid of it or who put it on. I guess that's still under investigation. And so I was reading in news articles how they were literally pulling the plugs on the TV monitors, but that idea that institution was penetrated, so you have that by this deep fake, so that's the second wrinkle. But the third is something you were telling me about Reddit, where people thought it was not a deep fake. They thought it was real.
Yeah, it was on the front page of Reddit last night as this really happened.
And so the distortion of reality is what we're talking about with deep fakes, right?
Yes.
I mean, it can be kind of funny, and people make memes, and there can be jokes, and whoever gets this video, I hope they make me some beautiful movie star. I hope I can be deep faked in a way that's very flattering. We can joke about it, but tell us about why you're devoting your time and resources to this. It's not just a joke, in other words, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because there's sort of that psychological behavioral component with the research that we've previously done in the cyber realm, with phishing, with all of the things. You're falling for something that you truly believe is real a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so really trying to understand how you mitigate those things in a quick environment as well, right? So when they walk in, they're taken off guard, those things are on video. And then how do you think quickly? Measuring pupils, looking at how the light is cast on someone, that's not something we can make a snap judgment on. So is there something else that we can come up with as part of this three-phase research to give people a quick way to really understand what's real and what's not?
I mean, this is all happening in this very evolving information ecosystem, right? I mean, I feel like it's not news to tell everybody it's real crowded out there, and there's a lot of fake stuff out there, so be careful. I'm seeing headlines like Lester Holt stepping down from, a major TV channel, and so how the public consumes information is changing right before our very eyes, and so it's really hard to tell where is this coming from, and is this real or not, and can I trust it? Most politicians are communicating via just videos they're doing like we're doing. I mean, this is an example of how we're just pumping out some content. How can people, so should I pinch you? Is that how how our viewers would know we're not being deep faked right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there are legitimate uses for it, and that sort of uncanny valley for deep fakes, right? That's so fascinating.
Isn't it?
Right? The point where a human says, wait, this is really robotic, and it makes them nervous. But I think deepfakes kind of circumvent that and
make us
bypass
believe it.
Yeah.
Just make us believe it's true. So we talked about phase 1. Tell us about a little bit about phase 2 or 3.
Yeah, so phase 2 is really going to take the information from phase 1 and use an authoritative source to try to see what kind of compliance that we get. I don't want to give away too much, right? Because if there are folks that are watching this, they might be primed.
Okay.
So we want it to be as realistic as of an experiment as possible. And then phase 3 is really looking at how we can take the findings from phase 2 and build out mitigation strategies.
When will you have reportable findings? Like what is your period of performance for this?
Yeah, so we should have something by the end of this summer related to phase 1, and then 2 and 3. This is a multi-year project, so we'll be having key reporting mechanisms throughout that 2.5-year period that we're working.
Awesome.
So the hope is that we'll have publications, we'll have things from a mitigation strategy that will be consumable by the public, consumable by your parents. You know?
Yeah. That'll be a whole other pod. We'll bring them on and see how they are tracking all of this. But no, thank you. This is really great. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing, and it's so important. Like I said before, we're just in these dynamic environment, aren't we? And consumers have to be so careful, which tees up the very next thing I want to talk about, which is apologies to Ezra Klein, but his great podcast ender question is, what are you reading right now? And I would love you to share with our audience the 3 books that you were talking about.
Oh, yeah. So I have a wild mind. I like to read and listen, and we've talked about my love for hot yoga.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a drive to the studio. So that was one of my New Year's resolutions, was I need to be productive on the road.
Yeah.
So the first book was Lights Out by Ted Koppel. And it was talking about a large-scale critical infrastructure attack and what might happen and how prepared or ill-prepared we were. It's a bit of an older book, 2014, but it still is very terrifying, and just thinking about from a critical infrastructure component, like what we should be worried about. So this isn't even in that. AI isn't even a part of it. That adds so much more. The second book I have been reading is Atomic Habits, and it's a really fascinating book to really think about how we can make changes in those small ways. So when you think about like a top level performing athlete, that it's pretty easy to get to that like 85th percentile or 80th percentile or 90th even, but a lot of people back off when they get to that sort of level of good and don't go beyond to like the top levels. And so there's this component or this concept of like improving by 1%. So you can sort of make little improvements to really make yourself elevate up to a high level. Hence, like listening to audiobooks and learning more. The third book, because I did mention I'm distractible, is called Focus, and it covers so many different areas. You know, it talks about how we really don't focus a lot as a society, and I think some of that kind of ties into the stuff that will make this deepfake experiment likely successful, right?
Absolutely.
That we will get people that do what we ask them to do, and that really truly believe that it is real and not a deepfake situation. So the focus part is just how we are a distracted society.
Oh yeah. Well,
Kids,
I will plead guilty to that. And I'm glad you shared that with us, because to go back to where we started with your role here at UNO, your role with CTEL, and your role in this project is really trying to make the world a safer place. And to prevent, in this case, deepfake, to mitigate against deepfake attacks, because at the end of the day, it isn't just some funny or silly or antagonizing thing. It could be you think your boss is telling you to do something, and so you do it.
Yes.
At detriment to the public, or to your whoever that public may be, your employees, students. I think about Koppel's book and Lights Out. So you're looking at how it could be used in critical infrastructure. So I love it. This is going to be a fun one to talk about. Those of you who've tuned in or are listening, thank you so much for showing up for NCITE Insights. We have Dr. Deanna House from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I'm your host, Erin Grace, and tune in again for another interesting episode of our podcast. This series is produced by Ben Badafarano, Erin Grace, Scott Jordan, and Blake Ersch. Thank you for joining us for another episode of NCITE Insights. The National Counterterrorism, Innovation, Technology, and Education Center, or NCITE, is an academic center of excellence for the Department of Homeland Security. Looking to find out more? Check out our website at ncite.unomaha.edu or email us at ncite@unomaha.edu.